Welcome back. You're watching Startup Central with me, Nayantara Rai, working from home. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated to startups, innovation, technology, disruption, entrepreneurship. Our next guest is the co-founder of Khatabook. We've seen a massive digital push thanks to the lockdown. It, of course, started first thanks to demonetization, then you've had GST, and then, of course, COVID-19. Khatabook has now announced that it's going to make a portfolio expansion from bookkeeping and sales to providing digital solutions to MSMEs. What exactly does that mean? What's in store for us? Ravish Naresh, the CEO and co-founder of Khatabook, now joining us right here on Startup Central. Ravish, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of the Startup Central. So you're adding a new chapter to Khatabook's bookkeeping, if I could call it that. What is it that you plan to do with MSMEs?
Firstly, thank you, Nayantara, for having me on the show. We're very excited to launch Pagarkhata. It's one of the new products in our lineup of offerings for Indian MSMEs. So Pagarkhata essentially, digitizes the book of a pagar. Basically, Indian MSMEs, manage daily or monthly wages of their part-time or full-time workers. And they need to keep an attendance record, and at the end of the day, at the end of the month, they, depending on how many days the employees has come, they disburse wages, and sometimes this is done on weekly basis, sometimes even done on daily basis, usually on monthly basis. So Pagarkhata encapsulates all of these flows and digitizes them. So before, there was a lot of back and forth in terms of confusion on attendance, which days I have come or not. So there was a lot of back and forth between the employee and the small business owner. So we, similarly to how we basically digitized the entire flow in Khatabook between the customer and the retailer, we intend to do the same with Pagarkhata between the employee and the business owner. So our idea is to basically one by one digitize all the flows that are happening inside the shop. We recently launched My Store 2 months ago, and Pagarkhata was up next, which we launched today.
So Ravish, if I could also ask you one question, which is that in this year, and for very obvious reasons perhaps as well, you've seen a massive push by startups to corner the business of MSMEs. There are many examples of many startups and unicorns who are doing that. Can I ask you how Khatabook is going to do it differently? What's the differentiator? Or is the market so large that it doesn't really matter?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest differentiators among us and all the other, I would say, larger and new players is within the last 18 months, Khatabook has already amassed over 9 million monthly active merchants. So a significant chunk of India's MSMEs are already on Khatabook platform. So we intend to utilize our own existing distribution to start digitizing all the other flows that are happening inside the shop. No other company has such a large base of digitally engaged merchants on a single platform. And that is our primary differentiator with all old and new players.
How big is this what's going to occupy a lot of your attention? Is it also a case where your core business, what you started Khatabook with, is in autopilot? Because that also is seeing stiff competition, right? Call it the Me Too effect or whatever it is, and many after Khatabook started getting into the same business as you.
Sure. So I think in terms of our time, from day one, our vision has always been to digitize all the flows, that are happening inside the shop. So we intend to use, our vision from day one has been basically to enable the shopkeeper with easy to use software. So he's basically able to run his entire shop on his mobile phone. And whatever he's doing currently offline, we intend to make it efficient using software. So managing wages and your employees was one of the things that was still happening offline. And for us, it's been a natural progression. From bookkeeping to enabling our merchants to manage their wages as well of the
How many registered users do you have now? Can I ask you if during COVID-19 you saw many more users come onto the platform?
Sure. So I think there has been a tectonic shift in terms of digital adoption post-COVID. So I would say cash flow. One of the things that Khatabook was originally solving was one of the hardest hit during COVID, and that is what merchants wanted to solve, and which is why Khatabook has seen a huge uptake in terms of adoption post-COVID. So we are already at a 40%. We are at a new peak of which is 40% greater than our pre-COVID peak. In terms of overall registered merchants. So as I mentioned before, we currently have 9 million monthly active merchants on the platform from over 700 Indian districts. So we have users in more than 95% of Indian districts, very deep penetration, very secular penetration across India, across all states, and nearly 20 million registered merchants on our platform overall right now.
How many languages? And is that going to also be the future of Khatabook? Just making sure you have many more regional languages so that everybody can run their shops and MSMEs on the mobile, their device in their language of choice?
Sure. So I think the last month we were 11 languages. Then we recently added Odia and Assamese as well. And yeah, so I think from in terms of localization, we've always wanted to solve for all the regions in India, and given how we're sort of solving for the user who has very recently come online for the first time. It was very important for us from the beginning that we are able to communicate with the user in his own language. So we have already supported nearly 13 languages, and whichever segment region we feel we will continue to add more languages. And Pagarkhata also from day one already supports 13 languages.
Can I ask you that, you've done bookkeeping, you're going to get into the digital solutions for MSMEs. Would the next obvious or the next synergy be that you would make them compliant, help them become compliant for loans or provide them from loans? Will you get into financing at all?
Sure. I think so. What we are eagerly waiting for is a bunch of developments on the regulatory and government front. So we're waiting for actually LSP APIs, account aggregators. So these are some of the things that are going to revolutionize lending, just like how UPI revolutionized P2P payments. There are some. These are some of the regulatory, I would say, developments that will take over the next 18 to 24 months, which will revolutionize credit dispersal and lending. So we're waiting for, still, I would say, waiting for these APIs to scale up, and only then we will look at financial disbursement of loans to our merchants directly.
You've told me how many languages, how many total merchants. Just to understand what COVID-19 meant for the shopkeepers and for the MSMEs, can you tell me what percentage of those users you actually got since March 24, since the lockdown? Do you have that data?
Sorry, what's the question? What percentage? I missed you there.
What percentage of your merchants, what percentage of your users you got since March 24th, since the lockdown? Just to understand what the lockdown has meant for the digital world and the MSMEs and the shopkeepers.
Got it. So I think we were cruising at nearly 6 million monthly active users pre-lockdown. And suddenly, when Modi ji announced the lockdown, especially in the first month, it was so strict that almost half of the businesses that were on our platform were completely shut. So users went down by half. But ever since, we have recovered to nearly 9 million monthly active users on our platform currently, which is 40% greater than our pre-COVID peak.
Okay, so that's good to know that, like you were cruising at That's 6 number, and look what has happened since the lockdown. Ravish, here's wishing you all the very best. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Startup Central. Good luck for your new journey.
Thank you, Nayantara.
Well, with that, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. Coming up for you on the other side, cybersecurity. We've seen a lot of breaches, haven't we? Whether it's at pharmaceutical companies, IT companies. What has it meant for your data? We've heard some horrific stories. Here is our next guest after this break is trying to find a solution for all of that. Stay tuned.